the place to go back to. That's where home is. And I often laugh and I say, I can't speak Hindi, including Norway and all these countries. I have over 30 addresses where I lived,
Yeah.
over 30, right?
Yep.
They gave her, I mean, uh, everything, and it was all by the government, paid by the government. And she became a remarkable young lady with that kind of support, the systemic support that we had. And of course, we were there. The pride that I come from a culture, I come from a country that has existed way before these people were still living in their caves. I can go to the hospital here, it's the same as if I went to a hospital 1,000 kilometers away in another town, in another place. The system is the same.
Yeah.
In India, unfortunately, you go to the next hospital and they have a totally different system. Living here all these years, I've noticed is that there's no that flexibility in when it comes to time or when it comes to um, how you treat others. It has to be like this, and that's the only way.
Yeah.
There is very little room for understanding that, hey, we're human and something can go wrong.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Desi Return. Today, I am excited to have Miss Prasantha on our show. So, she went abroad when she was 5 years old, and she has been living abroad all throughout her life and have plans to move back to India soon. And I really looking forward to the discussion for someone who has spent pretty much her entire life abroad and why the thought of moving back to India and what made her to think about that and how she was planning about that move. So with that, welcome to the show, Miss Prashanta.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
That's great. So let's start a bit about your background and your journey abroad. I think that would set the stage for for our audience.
All right. Well, it always starts with our parents, right? When you're that young, you really don't have much of an influence. And my father had wanted to, for his higher studies and just generally career development, he wanted to go abroad. So he left this little village in near Vishakhapatnam, Srikakulam, near there, and moved. The first posting was in Trinidad. And I was just 5 years old then, and we had to travel all continents, from India, first Chennai, from Chennai to Mumbai, from Mumbai to London, I think, and from London to Florida, somewhere Miami, and from Miami to Port of Spain. So that was my very first international journey, and it was very exciting and so surprising. Although I was just 5 years old, I remember everything from that trip. And from there, it was England and Ireland and Denmark and Sweden, US in between. There was like so many countries along the way that my father was trying to search for the ideal life, if you will. I don't know. Basically, he always wanted to go back to India.
Mhm.
His but even though he was in Trinidad and he was offered the citizenship, even in England, which is a rare thing, he was actually told, "We'll give you the citizenship," because he was such a good doctor, professionally. They offered it to him, and he said, "No, no, I'm going back to India. I'm going back to India. I don't want any of this." Until we landed in Norway, and that was when my mother put her foot down and she said, "Pension. You're going to retire soon. We cannot do this. We cannot keep traveling from country to country." And he remained here for the last 18, 19 years of his life in Norway.
Okay.
So this was our last stop. And I married when I came to Norway as well, and so on. So all of these countries I mentioned, I traveled along with our parents. And Scandinavia is perhaps the area where we lived the longest. in Denmark 5 years, and then after marriage, now it's 36, going on 37 years in Norway. So it's a very long time. So, and India has been, I think I take after my father. It's been like the dream, the place to go back to. That's where home is. And I often laugh and I say, I can't speak Hindi. I can't speak most of the Indian languages, and I manage very well in Telugu. I speak pretty good Telugu, thanks to my parents and my grandparents. But the moment I land in Delhi or any Indian airport, don't know the language, but if I see something amiss, I feel like it's my own home. And I immediately start telling them, hey, fix that, clean up, or I will do it myself. And that's like the moment I land at the airport itself, I start doing things like it's home. And I don't do that in all of these countries that I've traveled. I've always felt like a guest. And I think that's why this move to India for me feels like just going back home.
If you're relocating to India after years abroad, listen up. I have created something that will absolutely save you precious time that most NRIs waste while Googling. This is based on my interaction with hundreds of people about their move back journeys and uncover the biggest frustrations NRIs face when planning their return. So I came up with something that can help. A 15-week email series, a free step-by-step roadmap to address these challenges and make your move back smoother and stress-free. Whether you're moving back for family, retirement, or visa-related reasons, we got you covered. Here is what you will get each week. Actionable tips to decide if moving back is the right choice. Strategies to plan your move back, whether it's from logistics, career, financial, tax planning, how to choose the best school for your kids. And we also have several checklists that help you with the move from a financial, logistics, and much more. This isn't just an advice, it's carefully crafted roadmap to save you time, reduce stress, and help you make better decisions. Ready to plan your move with the confidence? Click the link below in the description to join for free and start receiving actionable strategies right in your inbox. Got it. So just curious, I know you mentioned, I think your father is a doctor, and I just maybe more curiosity, right? Especially for a doctor, moving from one country to other country might be a little bit more tricky because they have their own certifications, the requirements from a profession. So just curious on that part, like what made him to move so many countries, and you as a kid, like adjusting in different cultures. It's interesting. So if we can spend some time on that, that would be great.
Yeah, absolutely. My father, he was an anesthetist, and in those days, in the 1970s, early 70s, I think, they were not. It was not a popular specialty, because if something goes wrong in the operating theater, it was always the anesthetist's fault.
Yeah.
So it was not a very popular specialty. And my father was an anesthetist, so he was literally invited. He would laugh and say, at that time, if you're an anesthetist, they'll put garlands and invite you because they were a rare commodity, and they would make it easy in terms of getting the licensing and all of that, because the advantage also when you talk about language and all, that's also another funny thing. I mean, I'm quoting my dad a lot because I have a lot of conversations with him on all these things, and he said, "Hey, I'm an anesthetist. I put people to sleep. The only thing I need to know to count in the language is count backwards from 10. That's it." And are you comfortable? They're like the 2-word sentences I need to know, and I'm good to go. So that's how he kind of like he got away with not really learning the language, especially in Scandinavian countries that speak a totally different language. But the medical culture, the licensing systems, I think he was very lucky. He did have a lot of help. He had professors and other doctors that in the different countries that guided him through the policies and what needs to be done. My husband is also a doctor, and he came from India directly to Norway. And by that time, we're talking about the early 90s. things have changed already, and it was much, much, much harder. So for him to leave, like my father did, into different countries, was not, it's not the same. It meant that he would have to start from scratch one, whereas my father never had to start from scratch one. Maybe a little lower level, but still, it wasn't always, he didn't have to start from his internship and work his way up each time he moved a country. So that's, there's a lot of change in how the medical field has also evolved.
Got it. Understood.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, like you as a kid, traveling to different countries, right? You kind of mentioned about Europe, US, Scandinavia, like even for you to understand the language and talking to other kids, the teachers. So anything that you can share? I mean, I think I can imagine like as a kid, experiencing different cultures, adjusting to different languages. How was that for you? Like, traveling to different countries.
I always thought it was a huge adventure, to be totally honest. And again, I think I got my dad's fever. And he used to say that, hey, if God meant us to stay in one place, he would have given us roots like a tree. But we are meant to explore, we are meant to travel, and that's why we have feet. And I think just the way that he said it, as a child, I thought of it as an adventure. Oh, something new, something exciting. And it was only until recently, and to be honest, I'll have to quote my daughter now. And she said, you do realize that by moving the way you have moved, because in my entire life now, including Norway and all these countries, I have over 30 addresses where I lived.
Yeah.
Over 30, right? And there are going to be some more now if I make the move to India. So she said that, do you realize that that is an easy way out of making long-term relationships? You just are lazy because you are not committed to any place or people even. And so you don't have to invest yourself. You could get away with being charming and just, yourself. That's all people will remember of you, because they don't get to see you through this period of time that you spent. And it just made me realize that it has its advantages, definitely. As I said, as a kid, I think I just thought it was a big adventure. But now as I grow older, I do find the need to have that kind of stability in terms of having friends that I can rely on as I grow older. And I don't want to put a burden too much on my child, that she has to be responsible for taking care of us in our old age and all of these things. I don't want her to feel any obligations. And it's important now, I realize, to build a network and have my own friends and circle with whom I can rely on going forward. And that's hard work. So that's a disadvantage of moving around the way we've moved around. I have a lot of family in India, luckily. So that's one good thing. But again, since we were the only ones that were out of the country for a long time, I don't know them very well. They don't know me very well. But at the same time, it's family. So I'm hoping that would help to some extent.
Cool. So maybe you can talk a little bit about, the time in Norway, right? I think you have spent a lot of time in Norway. How was the life there? And why the thought of moving now? I mean, maybe we can come to that part, but maybe we can focus on the life in Norway, especially where you spend most of your life, I mean, in general.
Yeah. Well, Norway, again, it was my father that had come here first, and this was before we got married. And then my husband at the time was planning US, England, the usual English-speaking countries, and was preparing for all those exams. And then my father called him up and he said, Norway, so beautiful a country, and forget England, forget US, forget all of these countries. They need doctors. I think this is the place for you. And Chandra, that's my husband, he said, all right, because he was not, in any, that's the only place I have to go. He wasn't like that. And so he came here, and we're here. But we have moved to 11 towns and cities in this country.
Yeah.
So, we moved the length and breadth of this beautiful, beautiful country from the northernmost tip to the southernmost tip of this country. And life here is very, very, very different from India or even England, even Denmark, which is also a Scandinavian country. I think it's a very small country, very spread out population. Generally, Norwegians are very reserved compared to other cultures. Even Danish are much more outgoing and love to talk to people. But here, they're very, very reserved. Like I could remember that people would actually ask me when they would see me, and we'd go and say hi to our neighbors, and they'll say, "Oh, can I shake your hand? Am I allowed?" That is the level of not to be always polite because, and they don't know Indians because we are so few of them at the time, at any rate.
Yeah.
And so they confused us with Pakistanis or refugees, and they didn't know the difference between immigrants and refugees. And it was a very strange atmosphere for me because in all the other countries, they did know the difference between, an immigrant and a refugee, an Indian and a Pakistani, for example, and all of that. And lucky for me, I had this bindi all the time. So it wasn't that difficult, but they didn't know that I was Indian, and I had to constantly explain myself. Now there are many young people, IT especially. When I came to Norway, we were like 6,000 Indians, including families and kids, throughout the entire country. Now we're around 15,000, I think.
Got it.
So that's quite, spread across, but still, there's an Indian even here in this little village that I'm staying at. A couple of Indian families. So it's we are everywhere, and that's one part of it. The other part is, of course, we can never escape certain issues like racism or discrimination, and if you're a woman and have colored, then it's even more of a bit of a challenge. But what I did find, and I appreciate Norway for this a lot, is this acceptance. Like I would go in with my bindi and with my Indian culture. I'm a vegetarian, pure vegetarian. And this is a meat-eating country, big time, because it's such a cold country, hardly anything grows. So fish is their main diet, and meat, of course, reindeer and all of that. So me going in there, looking different, refused to eat their foods. I found I don't drink either. I'm a teetotaler. And it was totally, fine with them. They just said, oh, and they respected me for keeping my identity, this identity. And they would participate they would be curious about my religion or my festivals, because I would explain it to them. I would tell them, hey, today it's Navaratri, these 10 days I'm fasting and I'm doing this and that and all. And they automatically, Ramadan, you won't even drink water? How are you going to manage? I said, no. Indian fasting is like chill, we eat fruit. And I will drink my coffee and my tea. So it's not the same thing. And I would have fun with all of that, and I'll bring that culture in, and so I find that they were very accepting and embracing of it, and that is throughout the entire length and breadth of this country. So I do see that despite their reservedness, they are also people who want to learn more and understand more. And they do see themselves as a peaceful nation, country. They give out the Nobel Peace Prize, so they're very proud of that. Although, there have been a few major errors on that on who they give the prize to, but
Yeah.
still, they're very proud. They're very proud of themselves. They have a great social system that they're very proud of. And I have to say that I myself have been a beneficiary of it. My younger daughter, who is no more, and that's also one of the reasons we're leaving this country, she was a beneficiary, you know. She was blind and she had a chronic illness, and they gave her, I mean, everything, and it was all by the government, paid by the government, and she became a remarkable young lady with that kind of support, you know, the systemic support that we had, and of course, we were there. So-called resourceful parents, but still, I would say that we didn't have to fight for anything. We didn't have to. We don't understand what blindness is, for example, and they took it upon themselves to provide her with whatever she would need in order for her to be able to go to school, participate in equal terms, play football with other kids. I mean, do things that any child would like to do.
Yeah.
So a disability would not hamper her from living a full life. And we didn't know how to, you know, how to take care of her, how to get her to participate, but they took care of all of those factors. So it works at some level.
No, thanks for sharing that, and I'm sorry about the loss, but sounds like, I think, very very nice place, and people are very helpful, and the things that you're mentioning about, right, like for them to understand and providing those uh, like infrastructure or the options. I think that's fantastic. So I just want to touch base. I know there is always this heart for India for you, but maybe curious on the timing part, like why now or why in few years that you want to move. Anything that kind of triggered that thought, like, yeah, this is the time that you want to move. So just curious on that part of it.
Well, there are two or three things. The first is, of course, my parents are older. My father had made a decision that he's no longer is able to travel to Norway. So that, that was, and my mother-in-law is also there, and she's also much older and alone. And that's a big thing, I call them every day. I follow up every single day to make sure that they're okay, and I talk to their friends, I talk to their doctors, I do that. But there's always that element that I might not get there in time, in case something happens. And it's, I don't need that worry, let me put it that way, at this time of my life. That's one. The second, of course, is, and they're all very personal, right? The second one is my daughter. She's married a Norwegian, and I have 3 beautiful grandchildren. And it's so important for me because, look at me. If you look at me now, you would say that, has this woman ever lived abroad all her life, right? I look Indian. I am Indian. I speak with an Indian accent when I'm nervous. I do my pujas. I do everything. And it's a lot of it has got to do with the pride that I come from a culture, I come from a country that has existed way before these people were still living in their caves. And I want my grandchildren to know how privileged they are, that they have that blood flowing through them. And this is, and I cannot do it from here because it will always be at the superficial level.
Yeah.
It will be the minority.
Yeah.
But India, it's the majority. So I want them to come there, experience it firsthand, spend their summer holidays. They get almost 2 full months here. I want them to come and be in India, live in India, go to the ashram, feed the cows, and whatever it is that I think is India.
Yeah.
And I want them to see the diversity and the beauty of this country and know that this is also their heritage.
Yeah.
And this is also their home whenever they're ready to want to come back, if they ever feel they want to. Right. So that's the second reason. And the third reason is, I think, for myself. I am inspired by India. I I see the development over the years, how fast it's taking place. I see young people. I have been a leader myself. I mean, for more than 25 years. I started my own company now in my 58th year. And a lot of it has, and I see what is lacking, and I'm quite willing. I mean, there are pockets of India is such a huge country, so I don't like this generalization, but I have held many lectures in different parts of India on management and leadership. And what I do see is there is that, as of now, there is very little good leadership mentors, if you will, and I feel that we should be leading the world in this.
Yeah.
We always end up, and I see these young people here, they end up always taking a secondary role. They do the hard work, they do the presentations, they do everything, but they never take the lead.
Yeah.
They never step up to that. And I think it's time that India as a country and our young people do it. And like I said, there's a fine line between confidence and arrogance.
Yeah.
And I do find that they often get very mixed up, the young people, because they haven't been taught where does confidence come from? And arrogant language, where does that come from? And this is my expertise, if you will. And so it's a part of me that wants to go at this time when I'm not too old, but wise enough to know that life is a much more than just being on the rat race wheel. And my husband is taking early retirement. He is also one who wants to do voluntary work. He's a pediatrician. So he wants to do a lot of voluntary work, and there's need. There's a need. I can just say that my daughter's illness is an extremely rare illness. And she once asked me, so how many people in India have this illness? And, I checked it out, of course, and there were quite a few, but none of the children survived beyond the age of 5.
Wow.
Who had her illness in India? Nobody.
Yeah.
And in the Western world, there are those who have lived up to 50. She was 23 years old, but there are those that have lived up to 50 years, or at least have had some kind of a childhood. So that is also another factor that I feel that my husband would like to be able to change that. He's a researcher, and it's something that he can offer, to people to look at the broader picture.
No, thanks for sharing that. So sounds like it's more a timing of the early retirement of your husband, and that's when I think you would be making the move. And kudos to you, I think, in terms of there are some reasons to be with the parents and also helping the grandkids, but also like contributing the knowledge or the experience that you have for the benefit of the young people in the India and so many other things. So really, I'm grateful to hear that.
Thank you. I haven't gotten started yet, but I have to.
Yeah. So along the same lines, once you have decided to move to India, was there anything that you can talk in terms of the planning? I think, from your side, I think it's clear, right? Not anything on the, social service and some of those aspects to keep you busy on a professional life and, the other parts. But is there anything that you can talk about on a planning perspective, like on a financial planning or anything that you're doing while living abroad, to set up and make sure the transition is smooth and so on?
Yeah, this is actually a challenge because, like I told you, I don't even have an account in India.
Yeah.
A bank account, because I never felt the need for it. And as long as my parents were there, they were my bank. and so I just kind of like, hey, I need money for this, and I would get it, and I use my own cards from here. So that the financial system, how it works, I think that is where my husband and I would have to spend quite a lot of time in able to understand how it works and how we can transfer our funds from here to India safely, and how it would influence our pensions, whether our pensions will be, whether we would get them to an Indian account, or do we have to still maintain all our, Norwegian accounts in order for the pension to come there, and then have some kind of agreement with the bank to have it transferred. I mean, these are all, now luckily we're living in the world of internet banking. So generally speaking, it's not going to be a challenge. But when I change my address, I lose certain accesses, like my telephone number, by which the only one I can use to access my bank, for example. So there are these small things that I don't know how they work.
Yeah.
And I think financial planning becomes very important, because India has become more expensive. And if you want to maintain a certain kind of a lifestyle, like I want my driver, and I want, I want my cook, and I want my house help. I want all of these things.
Yeah.
The cost, and I think that it's important that we have a very realistic view on it. So I'm in the process of talking to others who have made the shift and the move. And that's one of the reasons why that group that you have set up, the groups, I would say, that you've set up have become very important, because although a lot of them are very young and are coming from the US, I get a lot of information on, so this is the way to go about it. This is what I have to think about. And words like NRO,
Yeah.
NRI account, I don't even know what they are, but I'm beginning to learn. And then I tell my husband, oh, what does this mean? What does that mean? And then he'll say, okay, let's just check it out. Let me explain it to you. So, that's just and I think that's important to have at the base. And that's one. And the second thing is that I'm a diabetic, I'm on insulin and so on. And here the government provides all my medication and everything for me, right? It's free. So, and in India, I will have to buy. So again, I need to find a good medical system that will make sure that I can continue with my treatments and not fall sick, and all of this. Have a plan, a contingency plan, and a budget.
Yeah.
Also for healthcare costs, because that's something that I see that my parents have not done.
Yeah.
And as you grow older, naturally your healthcare prices, needs will also increase, and they struggle between the two countries, especially since my father is not coming back to Norway anytime soon. Then it becomes quite a huge problem. So these, like the medical system we need to have that in place as you grow older, I think, and start saving now itself when you're healthy enough and you're able to take care of these things. And the second thing is, of course, make sure that your pensions, that you're not double taxed and things like that, which we know very little about, and educate ourselves literally on how the Indian and the Norwegian system work together, and the laws and regulations regarding these two. So that's where, at a very basic level, when it comes to these are the two major things.
Yeah.
Housing and all, I'm not too worried about.
Yeah.
My husband and I, we are simple. We're happy in a rented house.
Yeah.
As long as we can get away and enjoy the nature, and
Got it.
That's all.
So, when did your parents move to India? So if you can talk a little bit about their journey, right? I mean, they have also spent quite a bit of time abroad, and sounds like they moved to India. How?
Yeah, 4 decades. They lived abroad 4 decades almost.
Wow,
So
40 years abroad, and then they moved to India. So for how long have they been living in India?
the last 15 years, almost 50, not yet fully, but almost 15 years.
Wow. Okay. So pretty much maybe after retirement or something.
Yes, my father retired when he was 65. He at 67, but he took early retirement.
Sure.
So he left from India when he was 65. Their journey was actually quite okay because they were able to move back and forth. And every summer they would be in Norway, and every winter they'd be in India. So they got the best of the both worlds. And my children are beneficiaries. We would go every year to India. So I think that the transition for them wasn't too difficult.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I do see that now as they're getting older, they're finding it harder. Not so much because here, even if the system is flawed in many ways, it's still a system that works. It's the same. Though, if I can go to the hospital here, it's the same as if I went to a hospital 1,000 kilometers away in another town in another place. The system is the same.
Yeah.
In India, unfortunately, you go to the next hospital and they have a totally different system.
Yeah.
Everything changes. And I think that is the biggest challenge for them. And
Yeah.
To understand all of this. And so they do prefer so they are in consultation with their Norwegian doctors because again, they understand this.
Yeah.
They've lived here for 18 years, the last years of my father before retirement. So I find that it was hard also because of the extreme busyness.
Yeah.
Here, for example, nobody comes home to me without an appointment.
Yeah.
And that appointment usually is like 3 weeks in advance.
Yeah.
It's not like I just pop in tomorrow for a cup of coffee. That doesn't happen. Or even not even like that. They would everything would be planned.
Yeah.
And I think for my mother, the transition is harder actually than for my father because she was, of course, a housewife, and so for her to have this very planned way of living was perfect for her. And she is a very organized type of person, so she loved this Western call first, make an appointment, and then come.
Yeah.
Visiting, that suited her because then she could make a beautiful meal, nothing unplanned, dress up well, and all of that. But so I think for her it was extremely hard to have people just drop in, and it clashed with her what do you call it, the social because she grew up very traditionally, naturally, right? When my grandmother would, if guests came at 1 o'clock in the night because of the train, my grandfather would wake up. She would get up and cook food for them at that hour, wash their feet. I mean, that's the way my mother grew up. So naturally, she follows the same system, and now she's exhausted.
Yeah.
Because India has changed.
Yes.
Nobody does that anymore. So she's not able to fully adjust. She's still this thing, and I keep telling her, hey, it's okay. You don't need to get up at 1 o'clock in the night. Just show them there's the bed and let them sleep. And tomorrow morning, you can, give them a good breakfast.
Yeah.
So she has a more. My father is happy. He sits, he writes books. He's written about 20 books after his retirement.
Really? Wow.
Yes. So he, and I, as I say, I call up and I spend hours arguing with him on his books, and he has friends and people that come to visit him. So they're happy in that sense. And I laugh and I tell my parents, you know what, when I'm coming to India, at least you have a base because you grew up there, you studied there, and you're in the town where you studied and where my mother was born and lived. My grandparents' house is in Vishakhapatnam as well. So I understand. So people know you. They know you. Oh, you are so-and-so's daughter, and you're so-and-so. You studied medicine in Andhra Medical College. So people know them, right? And I said, I ride on your network at this moment. I'm just going to have to use it shamelessly because I don't have any. So I'm going to use their influence and their friends. So that's the advantage. Advantage part of it is that they have gone back to a place where they lived and studied and have childhood friends. And I think that makes a lot of difference in terms of how quickly you can adjust.
Yeah.
Coming from abroad to that, you need to have something.
Yeah.
Which is what my biggest fear, that I don't have that something. In India, I don't have childhood friends. I don't have. I didn't study with anybody. Yeah, I did a college life, all of these things, and I get a little envious of my husband when he talks about his college friends. And in Telugu, he says, "Oh, what I've never heard him say that. It's a bit, for me, it's like very rude." I said, "Could you talk like that to your friend?" And he says, "We grew up together."
Yeah.
So I feel a little envious. So when he's going back to India, he's like reaching out to his friends and calling them up and say, "Hey, find me an accommodation. I'm looking for this place. I need this. I need that." And I'm like, okay, so what am I, and I'm so scared of being at home and just not knowing where I belong.
Yeah.
I am scared of that, to be honest.
Yeah.
But it's an adventure.
Adventure, yes. So, just curious in terms of the plan. I know you have the plans to move. Like, is the plan to spend the time in India completely, or also like travel back and forth between Norway? Just curious on that part.
My husband has no plans. He prefers now. He says, when I go to India, I want to be there and I want to, have that stability.
Yeah.
Of course, as I said, I have my child here and my other daughter and my grandkids. So I said already that I will, and my business is based in Norway as of now. So I said that I will be shifting between the two countries. Most of the time, though, in India, of course. That's the aim. Maybe 3 months in Norway. That is my initial thoughts. But when you talk about planning, there is one thing that I do think that has been a challenge, is the packing your things, sending, what to send, what not to send, what is a value, what is not a value. Because I remember when the packers, we haven't yet sent our stuff, but I just wanted to get some inquiry what it would cost, and then they asked us to evaluate the things that we have, and it's like 90% of it is junk. And evaluated, it only has meaning for me. It does have no meaning in terms of the money it costs. And I think that is a bit of I think that's one has to think about how much of this life that you have built over so many years are you going to take to India, and what does it, how important it is in the big picture of all of these things. Because there's one thing, I don't know if you've heard about the Swedish death, but I don't want to leave a whole lot of crap for my daughter to take care of.
Yeah.
Basically. And this is, but it is also extremely challenging and emotionally, especially since I've lived, as you said, in so many different countries. There's so many memories, so many artifacts, if you will. I still have my French workbook from almost 50 years, from Trinidad.
Wow.
So there you go. And to get rid of all of this stuff is not easy. It's not easy. So I think that's something when people should think about seriously. Make a list of the things that you are going to take and keep with you no matter what, and what are the things that you can safely thank it for its service and let it go.
Yeah, that's an important aspect. I mean, I especially like, the lifelong memories or the things like, you just accumulate a lot of things. And when you're making a big move, like a country to country, that's a big decision process, what to take, what not to take, and takes quite a bit of time.
Exactly.
So is there any topic that we haven't covered that you want to bring up, or any advice that you want to give for future aspirants?
I don't think there's anything. I think India is First of all, the biggest challenge there has been, and I think I mentioned it a little earlier, is this knowing where to settle. So someone like me, who have simply not lived in India permanently enough, my only connection really to India is Vishakhapatnam, and that is because my grandparents' house is there. We would go there for our holidays. We'd spend a lot of time there. So I know Vizag, I know its beach, and my parents have settled there. So that is sort of like the only town that I want. But my husband doesn't have any friends there because he studied in Warangal.
Okay.
So all his friends are in Hyderabad.
Yeah.
And so for me, any place would have been okay because I have lots of online friends and actually friends that I have met in Bangalore. So Bangalore would have been ideal for me that way speaking, but he doesn't have any friends there. So I think you need to really, and they're different, right? Every Vizag is different from Hyderabad to Delhi and Mumbai and so on. Cultures are different, not just languages alone in itself. And I think that you really need to study that a little bit more in depth when you decide to make the move and spend a little time. So we intend to spend, for now we have landed on Hyderabad simply because my husband has friends, and that I'm hoping that will give me an in-pass into a broader network. But that being said, that it's study it, study the areas, and if you have children, especially, I think schooling, how much involvement you yourself, distance to traveling, to work, and all of these things. I think they make a difference.
Yeah.
I would, and I always underestimate the traffic in India.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I invariably, and I feel embarrassed because we come from a country where people, if they say 10 o'clock, they're 2 minutes before 10 on time. And so it's very much ingrained. And then I say, hey, I'll be there at 10 o'clock. And then I don't turn up until almost 11 o'clock because I underestimated the traffic. I'm not used to traffic.
Yeah.
It's a very funny thing here. We have this, what do you call it? A post office. I remember going to a post office and there were like 1, 2, 3 people. This was just before Christmas. So people were sending their greeting cards and presents and packages, right? So there were like 4 people there. And a fifth person came in and he looked around and he said, oh, such a long queue. And he walked out. I'll come back at another time. So you can imagine what we're used to.
Yes.
4 people is a queue.
Yeah.
So it's too long. The queue is too long. And I think that that's something we have to mentally prepare for. That things will take longer, get to from A to B and things like that, and be more tolerant, be more forgiving when things happen.
Yeah.
There's like appointment, things change, and be more willing and more flexible. And I think that's something that we don't learn in the West, to be totally honest. We living here all these years, I have noticed is that there's no that flexibility in when it comes to time or when it comes to how you treat others. It has to be like this, and that's the only way.
Yeah.
There is very little room for understanding that, hey, we're human and something can go wrong. So often I feel like I'm not a robot, and I'm one of those leaders that often says that if I had a fight with my husband in the morning, guaranteed you come in through my door and ask for help, I'll tell you, take a hike. But I had a good morning breakfast and a good cup of coffee with my husband, and you come in and ask for help, I'll say, hey, come along, sit down, what do you need help with? So what happens at home is going to have an influence on my workplace. So I've been like that, and it's been a little bit difficult for a lot of people to understand, but I do. This is the one thing that I've noticed. It's very rigid in that terms. You're at work, and it's like very this thing.
Yeah.
India requires that you need to have that ability to understand the bigger picture often and keep it. Can't be too free, but at the same time, I do believe that it's okay to treat people that they have other lives than work,
Yes.
or other lives. I mean, things can happen, and have that openness. And yeah.
Great. So,
Okay.
yeah, thank you
Yeah.
very much for taking the time and sharing your thoughts and your plans to move back to India after such a long time. And also, like the journey of your parents, right? I mean, who have spent close to 4 decades. It's a long time, and how their move has been going on. So, wish you all the best. I think maybe
Thank you.
we will be in touch again, maybe after your moves to see how things were going. But I really appreciate for your time and taking and sharing your story with us on our platform today.
Thank you for listening.
Yeah. Thanks. Take care.
Okay. Take
Yeah.
care. Yeah.